Today, we become legends.
Today's Titan Talk had Kellen, the lead audio director, on the show, as well as some hotfixes and a small balance patch that was released yesterday. But without further ado, let's jump into the recap. First up, there's been a few hotfixes and a small balance patch since the last show. May 8th fixed Guan Yu's cooldown reduction, doubling if you cast as one while channeling another ability. They fixed Artemis Trap not being interrupted by cripple immunity. They fixed the report button not working in the post-match lobby. They added Merlin's stun animation finally, and they set the default announcer pack to appear if you have no announcer pack selected. There was also a small balance patch released yesterday as of recording that nerfed the Executioner's strength from 40 to 30 and int from 70 to 55. Totem of Death's cooldown rate was nerfed from 20 to 15, and Demon Blade's base attack speed was nerfed from 20% to 15%, so 50% to 45% total on the item. Of course, this was just a hotfix to address some of the key outliers that were overperforming, and we can probably expect more major balance shifts in the actual OB10 update that we'll get to see on Monday, although they usually don't have full balance changes ready for the Monday showcase, so they'll probably be on Wednesday or Friday next week. But with that stuff out of the way, let's move into the Q&A section of today's show, which, as I mentioned before, had Kellen on, who's the lead audio designer on Smite 2, so there was a fair few audio and announcer pack related questions today. First up, they're aware of some announcer packs having the enemy has been slain and you have slain an enemy reversed, and they fixed it for Kepri, Might of Neptune, and the Squeaky Squeak announcer packs at the moment, and they'll keep looking into any others that have that issue and working on fixing them. Kellen did mention that the announcer packs that were ported from Smite 1 were volume balanced in the in-game editor itself, not in the actual audio file, and so when they exported them, he had to manually audio balance every pack that was brought over, which explains why some announcer packs seem too quiet or too loud in Smite 2 at the moment. On a similar note, Kellen also said they're working on volume sliders for quips, which is good to hear, as most of them are far too quiet at the moment, and it would also give those the opportunity that don't want to hear them to just turn them all the way down. They said they're not sure if that will be done and ready for OB10, but they're working on it right now. Kilgoon also gave a brief overview of next week's shows, as it will of course be a pretty big week. They'll have the OB10 showcase on Monday for Apollo and all the other stuff coming in OB10. The God roadmap reveal for the next gods coming to the game will be on Wednesday, and Friday will likely be a full patch notes review and Q&A session for OB10. Someone asked for a max stacks button in practice mode, and Kilgoon said they would like to get this in, and there's been more and more requests for it over time, but they just haven't prioritized it over other things. But they do see the requests, and it is creeping its way up the priority order, so hopefully sometime soon. There was a question of if there's going to be a big optimization pass at any point soon, and Kilgoon said they're always looking at optimization improvements, and they will be upgrading from UE 5.3 to UE 5.5 pretty soon, and that should hopefully come with some performance improvements. But it could also vary depending on your system setup, especially for PC, so sometimes a massive improvement for one player might not even do anything for another player. Kilgoon also specifically mentioned that MOBAs are quite notoriously hard to optimize because of all the stuff that's going on at any one time, and he gave the example of minions and that they're much more intensive than you think. The reason why minions spawn one by one like they do is because spawning a wave of 6 minions for each lane for each team all at once would be way too computationally intensive and likely would cause frame drops every time minions spawn for lower end machines. Someone asked why Neith doesn't have an announcer pack when she's one of the most popular gods, and interestingly, it's because she predates announcer packs, and so they didn't record one for her when they initially did the voice acting work and never rehired her voice actor to make an AP. A lot of older gods like Neith don't have APs for the same reason. For newer gods, they record the announcer pack lines in the same sessions that they record the god lines, so they don't have to rehire the actors at a later date. But for those older gods, they didn't do that because announcer packs didn't exist. There was a question about when we can expect the next Conquest environment art update, and they said they have been testing some stuff internally as previously mentioned, and the trees are going to be the next thing to be updated. And Kilgoon said maybe in the next update, but not for sure. At the very least in the next few patches, we should see the next update for Conquest art. Someone asked if they're aware of the issue of full physical teams essentially gatekeeping mitigation from tank builds because Prophetic Cloak and Oni Hunter's Guard both require magical enemies to be useful, and Kilgoon said generally that's by design and they want some items that aren't useful against all kinds of team comps. But he did say they probably should have some kind of physical defense item with percent mitigation for cases like that, which I do agree with. Someone mentioned that the Kill Minotaurs quest can be very hard to complete for arena mains, and they said they agree and they're looking into what will make that quest easier or reworking it so that solo arena mains have a way to complete it reasonably. Someone asked about ranked duel when, and they said they're working on the tech to add leaderboards, which would effectively make duel into a ranked mode since it already has bans and MMR. There's just no visible way to see your progress, which leaderboards would add. He said it's not going to be in the next patch, but hopefully soon. There was a question about Ethereal Staff and Toxic Blade, and Kilgoon said he doesn't know the design team's exact thoughts on these items specifically, but he personally likes Ethereal Imperial Staff, and for me, I think it would make a lot of sense with a new focus on max health stacking builds, though it would need to be carefully balanced, of course, since you can achieve way higher max health in Smite 2 than you could in Smite 1, so a direct port probably wouldn't make a lot of sense. Kilgoon also did mention that several new items will be coming in OB10 though, which is exciting to hear, so we'll see those on Monday, I assume. Someone asked about adding a few more unpopular gods that fill specific niches sprinkled in between the more popular gods that they're releasing, and Kilgoon said that's sort of what they're trying to do at the moment, really. For example, Kali was not a very popular god in Smite 1, neither was a Wheelix really, but they filled niches of the true auto-attack jungler and a Wheelix's knock-up related synergy, so they brought those a little earlier alongside some of the more popular gods of this wave like Cerberus, Guan Yu, Merlin, etc. He said you might not necessarily have to wait until right at the end of god ports to receive your god if they're unpopular. Popularity is a large part of what they look at for god ports, but it's not the only thing. They also like to fill specific niches, they consider the amount of time investment a god takes to port over, among other things. Someone asked if we could get a splat sound when someone dies to the fire giant door closing, and they said yes, that sounds hilarious, and I completely agree. There was a question of if they would add an option to use diamonds instead of tokens to buy things when you have tokens, and they said no, that's the design intent, and they don't really see any reason why you would not want to use your token when they'll be the same value no matter when you use them. You may as well just use it at that point. Someone asked what their favorite adventure modes were, and Kilgoon said either Xingqian's Mountain or the Hercules Dungeon, but the most popular adventure was of course Corrupted Arena. There was a question about buying mastery level with legacy gems, and they said definitely not, as it makes mastery levels somewhat meaningless when you can just buy your way to as many as you want. Someone asked if we could just log into the game automatically and not have to press a button on the login screen, and Kilgoon said that screen does need to exist for if servers are down, but he doesn't necessarily know why you have to click to log in, and they'll look into if it's even necessary or not. There was a question about if we can be able to enter practice mode while in the queue for a match, and Kilgoon said they are working on this actually, but he's unsure what the progress has been and whether it will be ready to ship anytime soon, but they are working on it and they think it should be in the game. And finally, there was a question about the tank situation, and Kilgoon basically said it seems like tanks might be underperforming a bit, but they don't want to go too crazy in the other direction too quickly before people have a chance to adjust their builds, but they do feel like tanks could be a little more tanky, and they'll look into it for the OB10 update. But that's everything discussed on today's Titan Talk. Don't forget to drop a like before you leave if you find these recaps useful, and subscribe to the channel to catch my coverage of OB10 and the God Roadmap next week. But until then, I'll catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.